On December 26, 2004, a deadly earthquake of 9 magnitude originated deep under the Indian Ocean near the west coast of the Indonesian island of Sumatra. This quake gave rise to a series of shock waves that unleashed nature's fury on thousands of unsuspecting people on the coastal regions of 11 countries from Indonesia to Africa. By the end of the day, the tsunami had claimed over 230,000 lives and caused extensive damage to property. So how do we prepare ourselves to face disasters such as these? For this, we need to have effective disaster management programs that tell us what to do before, during, and after such incidents occur. So what does the word disaster mean? A disaster is a destructive event that occurs suddenly and involves loss of life and property. Disasters can be of two types, natural and man-made. Earthquakes, volcanic activity, tsunamis, floods, cyclones, landslides, avalanches and droughts are natural disasters and man has no control over them. The man-made disasters, on the other hand, are triggered by human beings. Some of the man-made disasters are bomb explosions, terrorism, war or civil war, leakage of poisonous chemicals, breach in dams, air or water pollution, industrial accidents, and epidemics. Whether natural or man-made, these disasters hamper normal routine of the society and usually affect a large number of people. Disasters can also lead to huge loss of life and property. Every disaster has a specific effect. For example, if flood strikes an area, it can cause waterborne diseases and even lead to epidemics. Similarly, in the event of an earthquake, there is severe damage to buildings. When a disaster strikes a society, external help is usually needed in the form of aid to cope with its impact. This is true of India, which is considered one of the most disaster-prone countries in the world. A large population and peculiar geographical location expose India to several natural disasters like cyclones, floods, droughts, earthquakes and avalanches. Cyclones in the eastern coast, earthquakes in the Himalayan region, floods in the Gangetic plains, and droughts in Rajasthan, Gujarat, Orissa and South India happen repeatedly. Some of the worst natural disasters to strike India in recent years have been the October 29, 1999 supercyclone of Orissa, earthquake in Gujarat in 2001, and the December 26, 2004 tsunami that hit Andaman and Nicobar Islands and Tamil Nadu. Tamil Nadu recorded the highest number of casualties during the 2004 tsunami, with over 8,000 lives lost. In a developing country such as India, damage caused to life, property, and sources of livelihood is greater than in other developed nations. It is not possible to completely secure our land from disasters, yet the loss incurred from these disasters can be reduced to a great extent by having an effective disaster management system. This is the reason why we need an appropriate system to cope with disasters. The discipline of coping with disasters is known as disaster management. Disaster management refers to the measures taken for the safety and protection of life and property from natural or man-made disasters. This means being prepared for disasters, fighting disasters effectively, ensuring the safety of life during disasters, and helping in rebuilding society after the disaster. This is done at the personal level, group level, community level, and at the governmental and non-governmental level. So, as we have seen, we can take some steps to minimize the damage caused by disasters, whether natural or man-made, by having an effective disaster management in place.
January 12, 2010 was a date that the people of Haiti would not forget easily. On this day, a strong earthquake measuring 7 on the Richter scale shook the country. The earthquake had its origin deep within the Earth's crust, about 15 miles west-southwest of the city of Port-au-Prince. This silent killer struck without warning, and within a short span of time destroyed homes, office buildings, and roads, killing an estimated 200,000 people. About 2 million people were rendered homeless. Following this, there were 59 powerful aftershocks that caused even more devastation and hampered rescue work. An earthquake, like the one that struck Haiti, is a sudden tremor or movement of the Earth's crust, which usually originates at or below the surface. To understand this phenomenon, we must delve below the Earth's crust, where the activity originates. The outer layer of the Earth is solid and is divided into many sections known as plates. In fact, these plates form the base on which all the continents stand. These plates, however, are not stationary, but float over the molten magma that flows beneath the Earth's crust. These floating plates move slowly, taking the continents along with them. Sometimes, during the course of their movements, these plates move against each other. Many of the earthquakes occur on the edges of these plates, along fault lines, where the plates collide or try to slide past each other. In addition to tectonic plate movements, earthquakes are also caused by explosive volcanic eruptions. In such cases, earthquakes either precede or accompany these eruptions. Apart from natural causes, like the movement of the Earth's tectonic plates and volcanic eruptions, there are other man-made causes of earthquakes. These include vibrations caused by big rocks falling down hills because of erosion, hollow parts of mines falling down due to dissolution of minerals by water, and, in the present times, due to nuclear explosions. In addition to knowing why earthquakes occur, scientists are also able to pinpoint the location where earthquakes originate. The point of origin of the earthquake within the crust or mantle is called the seismic focus. Since the focus is often deep below the surface, the location of the earthquake is often referred to as the point on the surface of the Earth, vertically above the seismic focus. This point is called the epicenter. It is the epicenter and the surrounding areas that are most affected by an earthquake. The extent of damage that an earthquake can cause depends on its magnitude. Scientists who study earthquakes or seismology measure earthquakes with a device called the seismometer. A device which also records is known as a seismograph. They use an instrument to measure the magnitude of the earthquake, called a Richter scale. Big earthquakes occur not only on land, but also under the sea. Such undersea earthquakes give rise to giant waves called the tsunami, which cause great deal of destruction along the coasts. Did you know that more than 10 lakh earthquakes occur in different parts of the world, including ocean beds, every year? In fact, 2/3 of all the earthquakes occur in the Ring of Fire in the Pacific Ocean. Kashmir, Western Himalayas, Middle Himalayas, Northeast India, the plains of the Ganga and Indus, Rajasthan, Gujarat, Lakshadweep, Andaman and Nicobar Islands are the earthquake-prone regions in India. All the regions that lie in the earthquake-prone zones often face various kinds of damages caused by earthquakes. All earthquakes damage houses, buildings, roads, railway lines and telecommunication lines and lead to loss of lives. In hilly areas, earthquakes often lead to landslides. In coastal areas, earthquakes can lead to tsunamis. Although we know how and where earthquakes occur, unfortunately, we are yet to discover a foolproof way to predict when an earthquake will strike. And until we do, we have to do our best to be prepared to face such a disaster and take certain steps before, during, and after an earthquake to limit its damage. In the absence of a proper early warning system, the information about earthquakes and their intensity that are gathered by scientists should be shared with the public through radio, television, and newspapers. The government should promote construction of buildings based on earthquake-resistant techniques, and all under-construction houses should be made to follow the building guidelines. Another way to build secure buildings is to construct buildings over pillars made of concrete and iron that are built deep in the ground. In order to deal with the emergency, water, ration, first aid kits, radios, flashlights, battery, blankets, jackets, and fire extinguishers should be stored in safe places. With these preparations, we can be ready to face an earthquake. But what should we do when an earthquake strikes? The most important thing to do during an earthquake is to remain calm. If inside a building or a house, one should take cover under a solid surface like a table or stand in the doorway. If one is outside, then it is advisable to move to an open space away from trees, electric poles, and buildings. If possible, one should switch off the gas and electric supply in the house during a quake. Also, one should not use elevators. Once the quake is over, the affected people should be given immediate medical help. They should be given temporary shelters. People should be vaccinated to stop epidemics from spreading. Transport and communication facilities should be restored as soon as possible so that rescue teams can reach the earthquake-hit area. Police and paramilitary forces should be deployed to protect properties which had to be abandoned from theft. So, as we can see, though earthquakes cause heavy damages, we can take steps to minimize its damage and even take preventive steps.
Pompeii, Italy, 79 AD. The day had dawned like any other. Households bustled with activities, and the citizens of this Roman city went about their daily chores. Except, unknown to these people, time had run out for this beautiful city situated at the foothills of Mount Vesuvius. Then suddenly, Mount Vesuvius erupted without warning, spewing smoke, molten lava, and hot volcanic ash. For 2 days the volcano continued to rage, burning to ashes everything that came in its way. Pompeii and the neighboring city of Herculaneum were completely destroyed. Buried under lava and ash, these cities lay forgotten until they were accidentally discovered in 1599. Vesuvius has erupted many times since then, and is regarded as one of the most dangerous volcanoes in the world. Volcanic eruptions like that of Mount Vesuvius is one of the most awesome examples of nature's power, proof of the ceaseless activity that takes place below the Earth's surface. But why do volcanoes erupt? The Earth we live is actually a ball of fire that has cooled on the outside. It still has a burning inside, filled with molten magma at very high temperature. This molten magma is under enormous pressure and is on the constant lookout for an opening. And finally, when it finds one, all the molten rocks or lava, along with gases and steam, flow out onto the Earth's surface. This is called a volcano. When extraordinary levels of pressure develop within the Earth, the lava and gases explode, causing great destruction to the surrounding areas. Such violent eruptions are also accompanied by earthquakes. Depending on their activity, there are three types of volcanoes: active, dormant, and extinct. The active volcanoes erupt from time to time. Mount Vesuvius is one such active volcano. The dormant ones were active in the past, though they have not shown any activities for a long time. The extinct ones, on the other hand, do not have any recorded history of being active. All these types of volcanoes may occur at any place on the Earth, but most of them are found in the Ring of Fire in the Pacific Ocean. Volcanic eruptions are not limited to the land. Similar eruptions can also happen below the sea. Earthquakes and volcanic eruptions cause a sudden disturbance at the base of the ocean, causing abrupt displacement of water. Such activities produce very high waves, which are called tsunamis, also known as killer waves or tidal waves. Normally, only one high wave is produced during a tsunami, and in due course a chain of waves appear in the sea. The waves move with great speed in deep sea, but become slow when they reach shallow sea near the coast. In deep seas, length of the tsunami waves is more and the height is less. In a shallow sea, when the waves meet the obstructions along the shore, they can reach a height of 20 to 30 meters with a speed of 400 to 1000 kilometers per hour. As a result, coastal areas of the world are prone to tsunamis. These include Alaska, Japan, Philippines, Indonesia, Malaysia, Myanmar, Sri Lanka, and India. Apart from loss of lives, tsunamis can damage settlements on the coasts and affect transport by disturbing shipping lanes of the sea. On December 26, 2004, an earthquake undersea off the coast of the Indonesian island of Sumatra caused a giant tsunami that led to the death of 1.5 lakh people in 11 Asian nations. Following the devastating tsunami of 2004, the government of India has taken a few important policy measures to lessen the damage caused by tsunamis. India is now the member of a network of countries who warn each other about tsunamis. India has also procured a tsunami monitoring system from the USA. During a tsunami, one should move to higher grounds or hold on to a sturdy tree to avoid being swept away. If in a boat, one should not come close to the shore. People who live near the sea should contact a disaster management center on phone. While vacating their house, they should carry a survival kit. After a tsunami, people should disinfect the affected area where the waters had accumulated. to avoid outbreak of waterborne diseases, people should only drink boiled water. Unlike the volcano and tsunami that have their origins deep within the Earth's crust, our next type of natural disaster, the cyclone, strikes from the air. A cyclone is an egg-shaped air formation that moves in the form of swirling winds. It has low air pressure at its center, but very high pressure at the surface. Since air moves from a region of high pressure to a region of low pressure, cyclones cause high winds and heavy rainfall. Cyclones originate in the area between 10 to 15 degrees north and 10 to 15 degrees south of the equator and are known by different names in different regions. For example, it is called hurricane in the nations around Atlantic Ocean, typhoon around the Pacific Ocean, and Billy in Australia. These cyclones, in addition to appearing within certain latitudes, also usually occur near sea coasts. Cyclones can cause great damage. They can affect essential services and damage crops. People and animals that come in their path may even face death. We can take some precautions to protect ourselves from cyclone. The best method is by using the early warning system. Since satellites help us in tracking the course of cyclones, the Indian Meteorological Department issues cyclone warnings in India. Cyclone-proof structures should be built in coastal areas. Planting trees also help in fighting cyclones. Natural disasters like volcanic eruptions, tsunamis and cyclones can happen anytime, anywhere. We need to take precautions to save ourselves from these natural disasters and lessen their impact. Did you know that the Wangho or the Yellow River in China is called the cradle of Chinese civilization, as well as China's sorrow? This is because this river basin is the birthplace of the northern Chinese civilizations, and during the early times it was a very prosperous region. However, because the river causes frequent and devastating floods, it has earned the name China Sorrow. Floods like those caused by the Wangho often cause great losses to life and property. Let's learn more about floods, their causes, and methods to deal with them. Floods occur when land gets submerged underwater due to various causes like excessive rain, overflowing rivers, increase in water in reservoirs, cyclones, tsunami, sea tides, and melting of glaciers. Floods caused by cloudbursts, bursting of dams, or tsunamis are called flash floods. Many countries of the world are prone to floods. Every year, vast swaths of land are inundated by floods in India, China, and Bangladesh. In India, the states of Assam, Meghalaya, Arunachal Pradesh, Tripura, West Bengal, Bihar, and Orissa are prone to floods. The deltas of Godavari, Krishna, and Kaveri, and the river basins of Narmada and Tapti are also considered to be flood-prone. Floods can lead to huge loss of life and property. Flooding damages crops, and this leads to a shortage of food. In addition to food, there is also a shortage of drinking water because the sources of fresh water get contaminated by the flood water. This in turn can cause epidemics. Often, flood waters wash away railway lines and roads. While floods can cause severe damage, it is heartening to know that in many cases we can get an advanced warning that enables us to take necessary steps to limit the damages. Any flood is preceded by a threat period known as the probability period. This allows the authorities to issue warnings and plan evacuation. For example, prior to floods, there is persistent rain and the floodplains begin to receive extra water that the channels cannot hold. Dams that are about to burst give warnings in the form of cracks that appear on its surface. In India, the Central Water Commission has 132 forecasting stations in the country that cover all interstate flood-prone rivers. Over 6,000 forecasts are issued annually. In addition to issuing early warning, we can take other steps before a flood occurs to mitigate the damages done by this natural disaster. Mapping of major rivers, their floodplains and basins is the first step towards limiting flood damage. Next is the construction of artificial embankments like dikes and levees to divert flood water. Stream behavior should also be studied for charting of rivers and other water bodies. Artificial reservoirs should be built with sluice gates and sandbags should be used to block the flow of water. Low grounds or viaducts can be created to carry water in a certain direction or underground. Trees should be planted in the catchment areas to stop soil erosion. In case of an impending flood, all attention should be paid towards the safety of dams. Encroachments of human settlements on riverbanks should also be prevented. Having seen what precautions we can take before floods, let's see what we should do when flood waters start rising. We should be aware of snakes and other poisonous insects and rush to high and safe places. After that, we should ensure that we have clean drinking water. We should not drive if water levels are rising in an area. We should also keep away from rivers, dams and bridges during floods as they may give away any moment. The situation after a flood needs careful handling. The first thing that we should do is to clean and disinfect our houses. In case of any waterborne disease, we should get medical help. Also, we should help other people in need and cooperate with the authorities in cleanup and rescue efforts. It is not only humans who suffer as a result of flood. Animals too get affected. Injured or sick animals should be treated by veterinarians. We can motivate everyone to plant more trees to prevent floods. As we have seen, floods are deadly natural disasters that can greatly affect our lives. However, it is possible to be prepared in advance for this disaster and thus take timely steps to limit the damages. Midnight, August 6, 2010. A cloudburst over Leh caused a huge torrent of water to rush down the mountains, picking up stones, mud, vegetation, people and houses on its way. As daylight broke, it revealed scenes of great devastation. Entire villages had been swept away by the river of mud and rock, killing over 100 people and trapping many others. The affected areas lost all contact with the outside world as road and phone communication networks collapsed under the landslide. Such landslides are a common occurrence in the western Himalayan region. Natural disasters like landslides and avalanches cause a great deal of damage to both life and property. Let us trek up the slopes of the mountainous regions of India and learn more about these phenomena. When soil, stones and parts of vegetation slide down from hill slopes due to the gravitational force, it is called a landslide. Landslides can be caused by both natural and human factors. Natural factors such as excessive rainfall, faulty drainage system, steep slopes, raw layers of rocks, rivers flowing in mountains, and earthquakes can cause landslides. Human factors such as deforestation, uncontrolled excavations, heavy construction work, and improper use of the land can also lead to landslides. Hilly and mountainous areas and riverbanks are prone to landslides. In India, the areas prone to landslides are located on the Himalayas, its foothills, and the northern mountainous regions. The northeastern states and the Andaman and Nicobar Islands are also prone to landslides. The medium-risk areas in India include the western and eastern Ghats, the areas of the Nilgiris, parts of the Aravalli mountain range, and the Deccan Plateau. As is evident from the devastation in Leh, a landslide can damage anything that comes in its way. Apart from loss of life, landslides can damage roads, communication lines, human settlements, agricultural land, and crops. Landslides on important roads can lead to disruption of vehicular traffic. Landslides happen rather suddenly, and it is not possible to give early warning. However, it is possible to take precautions. One important step to avoid being a victim of landslides is to identify the areas that are prone to this natural disaster. Planting of trees on mountains and hills is another important step. Vegetation on hilly areas firmly holds the soil and prevents landslides. Step cultivation should be encouraged in hilly areas to prevent erosion of soil. Also, cutting of hills should be banned to thwart landslides. Often, building a firm retaining wall can prevent landslides. Overgrazing of cattle should be discouraged as it leads to landslides. Another important step is to stop all road construction that hampers the natural drainage of a hilly area. Buildings in landslide-prone areas should be made on strong plinths. Cables and pipes laid on a landslide-prone area should be flexible. Another natural disaster that occurs on the mountains is the avalanche. Unlike a landslide where mud and vegetation comes down a steep slope, an avalanche is the rapid flow of snow down a slope. Though nothing can be done to stop avalanches, we can take some precautions to escape from this natural disaster. People living in avalanche-prone areas should be made aware of this natural disaster. Growing more trees can check the movement and speed of the avalanches. As we can see, landslides and avalanches can wreak havoc and cause huge damage to life and property. We can identify the areas that are prone to landslide and avalanches and plant more trees to prevent such natural disasters. On August 6, 1945, while the Second World War raged, the United States dropped an atomic bomb on the Japanese city of Hiroshima, killing tens of thousands of civilians. While Japan was still reeling under this destruction, 3 days later, the United States struck once more, this time on Nagasaki. In Hiroshima alone, 70,000 people died immediately from the explosion and another 70,000 died from radiation within 5 years. Such was the power of this man-made disaster. Let's learn more about man-made disasters and their effect on mankind. Weapons like nuclear bombs are an important measure of a country's military strength. However, the use of these weapons always results in destruction. Since weapons are created by man, disasters linked to it are called man-made disasters. Apart from nuclear bombs, traditional bombs, often used by terrorists, can also cause severe destruction. An example of this is the horrific incident that took place in Mumbai on 11th July 2006, when a series of 7 bombs exploded within a span of 15 minutes on the suburban railway. The explosions killed over 200 people and left over 700 injured. The government plays an important role in managing such attacks. It tries to solve the problem of the terrorist attacks through discussions at the national and international levels. When the government receives intelligence about possible terror attacks, it issues warnings to the general public. It also educates the people on a national scale about the do's and don'ts of avoiding as well as handling such attacks. For example, warnings forbidding the people to touch unclaimed substances have been put up everywhere, especially on public transport. In case of an attack, people are advised to stay calm and try to help the wounded. Another type of man-made disaster is biological disaster. Such disasters are caused by microorganisms that cause epidemics. These have spread due to man-made conditions. Most of these have been infectious diseases such as malaria, plague, diphtheria, tuberculosis and influenza. Recently, a new virus, H1N1 or swine flu, gripped the nation, resulting in a national epidemic. Viruses affect birds and animals too. For example, the bird flu or SARS, which recently affected poultry, resulted in poultry being killed in large numbers. People can control the spread of these diseases by ensuring hygienic conditions and taking preventive measures. The government has taken a number of steps to contain the spread of these diseases, such as fumigation to control the spread of the malarial mosquito. In addition to biological disaster, chemical disaster is another man-made disaster. The Bhopal gas tragedy is the deadliest man-made chemical disaster to hit India. The poisonous gas leak caused thousands of deaths. As a result, even now children are born with deformities. Another chemical disaster in recent times is the radioactive material leak at the Chernobyl plant in Russia. While natural disasters may be difficult to control, human disasters can be easily controlled if some stringent measures are taken up to prevent them on time. On June 13, 1997, when people filed into Upahar Cinema in Delhi for a day of fun at the movies, little did they know that it would end in a horrific tragedy. A fire caused by a faulty transformer spread through the cinema hall and claimed 59 innocent lives. Over 100 people were seriously injured in the stampede that followed as people tried to flee the cinema hall. Many of the victims who managed to reach the exits found the doors locked. Trapped, they died due to smoke inhalation. Fires like that at the Upahar Cinema Hall are caused by sheer negligence or lack of proper maintenance. For example, faulty electrical wiring that causes short circuits can lead to devastating fires. In fact, most fires, except for lightning, are caused by people. Household fires are quite common. These are caused mostly because of somebody's carelessness. Sometimes even a matchstick thrown carelessly can cause unimaginable damage. It's important to get electrical wiring checked regularly to prevent house fires caused by short circuits. Another cause of fires at home is a defective gas cylinder with leaks, which may cause it to explode on lighting the stove. It is not only homes that are at risks of fire. Military ammunition depots are also prone to accidental fires. The fire at the Panagarh Ammunition Depot in West Bengal is an example of such an incident. At the time of the fire, the Panagarh Arms and Ammunition Depot had about 200 tons of ammunition. Even though there were no casualties, it resulted in great loss of money and property. Fires are not restricted to buildings only. Forests are also prone to man-made fires which occur due to the carelessness of man. It could start because of a carelessly tossed smoldering cigarette stub or a small campfire and result in the complete destruction of the forest. Though fire can occur indoors as well as outdoors and cause great loss, fortunately it is preventable in most cases. At home, we must follow simple do's and don'ts to avoid fires. We should not keep inflammable matter at home and always keep a fire extinguisher handy. We must remember to switch off all the electrical gadgets as well as the gas before going outside. Another way to prevent house fire is to keep matchboxes out of reach of children and restrain smoking in the house. To allow a quick getaway in case of fire, we must ensure that all exits like doors are easily accessible. We can take some steps during a fire to limit the damage. We must call the fire brigade immediately so that not a single moment is wasted. We should try to crawl because smoke is always less near the floor. The government has its own share of do's and don'ts. It contributes to the safety of its people through stringent checks against violation of safety norms. However, these checks should be carried out more frequently and offenders fined heavily so that people learn a lesson from it. As you can see, disasters involving fires are the result of human negligence. We need to take adequate precautions to prevent such disasters. Do you know that India has the highest number of road accidents in the world? Speeding, drunk driving, and inadequate use of helmets, seat belts and child restraints in vehicles are the main reasons for road accidents in India. However, road accidents can be prevented by following traffic rules. Remember that the legal age to start driving is 18. So, start only when you are competent and legally allowed to drive. Once you get your license, strictly follow the rules which were ingrained in you during the training. Some of the rules which will help you be safe include not talking on cell phones while driving, following the speed limit, and using helmets when riding bikes. A number of accidents occur on the highways. These generally involve trucks. To reduce such accidents, truck drivers in India need to be educated about traffic rules and the authorities need to be strict about enforcing these. Another mode of transport in India is the Indian Railways, which has the largest rail network in Asia and the second largest in the world. It transports 20 million passengers daily. To ensure smooth functioning of the network, the trains have to adhere to various rules and regulations. However, sometimes human lapses result in serious accidents. Train accidents are usually caused by derailment, signal failure, or fires caused by inflammable material. Apart from these, loss of life also occurs when people get hit by trains while crossing unmanned railway tracks or fall out of trains while leaning out of the doors. It is important to follow some rules in order to prevent train accidents. People should avoid smoking in trains and should never carry an inflammable material in the train, as these may lead to a fire. One should always pay attention to signals and look out while crossing unmanned level crossings. Air travel has gained popularity in recent years in India due to the introduction of low-cost carriers. Plane accidents occur due to human error as well as extreme climatic conditions. Some human-made air disasters can be caused by poor maintenance of the aircraft, fire outbreaks, and tired or inexperienced pilots. There are also eventualities like hijacking. To safeguard yourself against any disaster, you should adhere to the rules. On boarding, you must listen carefully to the instructions given in the plane by the pilot and other crew members. Look out for the nearest emergency exits and understand how they work. Disasters involving road, rail and air are usually caused by human errors and can be easily avoided by following rules and regulations.
As India celebrated its Republic Day on Saturday, January 26, 2001, a tremendous earthquake measuring 6.9 on the Richter scale struck Gujarat in the western part of the country. The quake's epicenter was near the town of Bhuj in the Kutch district, and the tremors were felt in Pakistan and as far away as Nepal. The death toll was as high as 1 lakh, and buildings in several areas were completely destroyed. Such incidents warn us that disasters, either natural, like the Bhuj earthquake, or man-made, like an epidemic, can strike us at any time. So, we should always be prepared to handle such situations. Disaster management prepares us to deal with such situations by preventing any calamity, minimizing the effects, and taking timely action for normalizing the situation. Disaster management is a chain of activities carried out before, during, and after the disaster occurs. To effectively deal with disaster in all its stages, disaster management is broken down into 4 important stages. These are advance preparation, relief to the victims, restoration of normalcy, and prevention plan for the future. Let's discuss each of these stages in detail. Making advance preparation involves educating the people about such occurrences and making adequate plans so that they are ready to manage the situation when disaster strikes. Government bodies, non-governmental organizations or NGOs, and the corporate sector play an important role in educating people and raising awareness among the community. An important part of advanced planning involves taking steps to lessen the impact of the disaster before it occurs. Therefore, it is very important to install a proper warning system so that everyone can be warned about the impending calamity in advance. While it is very difficult to predict natural disasters like the Bhuj earthquake, Cyclones can be predicted with the use of modern technology like satellite tracking. One of the best-known examples of an effective early warning was the cyclone warning provided by the NCERT system during the cyclone in Andhra Pradesh in 1977. This warning helped to substantially reduce the loss of life and property. Another important part of this stage is the advanced preparation of lists of the materials and resources which may be required at that time. For example, mobile medical facilities, tents, rescue equipment, and so on. Once these plans are in place, the people should be trained to respond to the situation through mock drills, training, and practice. The next stage deals with bringing relief to the victims. Once a disaster strikes, rescuing people is the topmost priority. Therefore, trained teams should be deployed to trace affected people and rescue them. Regular updates on the rescue status should also be given to the relatives of the affected. Once the affected have been rescued, food, shelter, and medical help are the next requirement. For this, community kitchens and arrangements for proper tents and toilets should be made for the affected people. In the case of the Bhuj earthquake, rescue efforts started almost immediately. Search and rescue teams made up of 399 rescuers carrying heat-sensing equipment and 26 rescue dogs assisted in the search and rescue operation. With their concentrated efforts, more than 300 persons were rescued alive in the first 5 days. One of the most memorable moments was when 8-month-old Murtaza Ali was rescued by the Border Security Force personnel from under the ruins of his house after being buried alive for 81 hours. The injured were provided treatment in the mobile medical units, while the affected people were put up in thousands of tents supplied by international organizations like CARE. Various organizations set up community kitchens to provide food to these affected people. Did you know that one such kitchen served food to as many as 3,500 people per day? This community kitchen was set up in Adisar by a Mumbai-based organization called Jain Sasan. After rescue operations, the third stage starts: restoration of normalcy and rehabilitation. Communication services get most severely affected in these disasters. To achieve normalcy, these services are restored at the earliest, followed by the rehabilitation process. This involves helping the displaced people emotionally and economically. Often the victims of disasters suffer great mental trauma due to loss of loved ones. Such people are offered sympathy and the services of support groups to tide over the emotional issues. Apart from emotional support, economic support is also vital, as most of the affected lose almost everything, like their homes and valuables, during such disasters. For example, the Bhuj earthquake caused severe loss not only of human life, but also property. A large number of towns and villages in the district of Kutch suffered almost complete destruction, with homes, schools, hospitals, health centers, and public buildings flattened to the ground. In Ahmedabad, more than 70 high-rise residential buildings collapsed. To deal with such loss, the government set up the Gujarat Earthquake Rehabilitation and Reconstruction Project to rebuild the affected areas with the active participation of the local communities and help restore normalcy. Once normalcy has been restored, the last stage begins, making a prevention plan for the future. Depending on the type of disaster, various community awareness and education programs can be taken up to avoid future risks. For example, after a severe earthquake, areas of high risk are identified so as to prevent people from settling in those regions. Furthermore, buildings can be constructed in earthquake-proof areas that are designed to withstand the seismic shocks without getting damaged. In the case of the Bhuj earthquake, it was found that the towns in Gujarat that were most damaged, like Anjar, Bachau, Bhuj, and Gandhidham, were situated on fault lines. Strict building codes were enforced in such areas to ensure that the reconstructed buildings were earthquake and cyclone resistant. In this manner, disaster management prepares people to deal with disasters before, during, and after they occur.
On the national level, the role of administration is to initiate rescue and relief operations depending on the gravity of the disaster. At the central level, the government has nominated nodal ministers to manage various types of disasters which help in streamlining rescue operations. In addition, there is a National Calamity Management Committee which is presided over by the Cabinet Secretary. Another committee that shares the responsibility of disaster management is the Calamity Management Group, which functions under the Central Aid Commissioner. In addition to these administrative committees, technical support is provided by organizations like the Central Weather Science Department for Cyclone and Earthquake, Defense Research and Development Organization, and the Civil Defense General Director. At the state level, a committee under the Chief Minister or the Chief Secretary views and takes care of relief operations. The Relief Commissioner or the Disaster Management Commissioner work under the control of the State Committee. The states conducts relief operations according to guidelines provided in the State Relief Codes, a book on the rules in state emergency planning. At the district level, the administrative committees are responsible for executing relief operations. They are empowered to set up coordination and supervision in various departments of the district. The Block Development Officer manages the operations at the block level in case of any disaster. At the village level, the Sarpanch of a village heads the Disaster Management Committee and assists the various organizations working in the field. Since it's not possible for the government to be solely responsible for completely managing the disaster, a number of institutions are involved in disaster management at different levels throughout the country. Some of them are the United Nations Disaster Management Team, UNDMT, Indian Armed Forces, National Cadet Corps, NCC, Civil Defense, National Service Scheme, NSS, Nehru Youth Center, Home Guards, along with some people from the private sector and media. The first people to respond to a disaster are those living in the local community. They are the first to start rescue and relief operations. It's therefore important to make people from all walks of life aware of the implications of disaster and its efficient management. To fulfill this objective, a course related to disaster management has been introduced in schools, technical colleges, training, and higher academic courses. In the aftermath of the 2004 Indian Ocean tsunami, the government passed the National Disaster Management Act (DM Act) in 2005. The Act considers a holistic approach to disasters that cover prevention, mitigation, capacity building, preparedness, assessment and rehabilitation. The DM Act established the National Disaster Management Authority (NDMA) as the apex body to plan, coordinate and implement disaster management at the central level and develop guidelines for state authorities. The role of administration is essentially organizing and mobilizing resources, both human and material, for preparedness, response and recovery in order to lessen the impact of disasters.